Yes.
All right, let's open with a prayer. John, you want to say the opening prayer for us and mention the prayer list?
Hey, let's pray. Do we have a list? Can we run a list? Let's pray. Father, we give you thanks this morning for a new word, a new moment, a new beginning. I'm grateful. We ask you that you will enter into our hearts in a special way this morning and study your word. Thank God for your encouragement and be all that you for your blessings on each individual that's here today. And we pray for these things in Jesus' name.
Amen. So 2 weeks ago, we went through a lot of background on God using broken people to spread his word, his message. And last week, John talked about Isaac. Now we're going to do the prequel. We're going to back up to Abraham. So this is what we traditionally think of when we talk about Abraham. Had a close relationship with God, asked by God to leave to go to another country he didn't know about, promised by God descendants and land. He was given a son in his old age. God asked him to sacrifice that son. God spared that son. And Abraham is the father of nations and the father of faith. He's mentioned in the book of the chapter of faith in Hebrews. But most important part of the story we leave out. We forget. We talked about 2 weeks ago how we tend as humans to put other folks up on pedestals, and we don't see the struggles they have and God working in their life, and we're missing out on it because I think, well, I don't think, I know that God put these things in the Word so we understand how God uses broken people. That we shouldn't be frozen in fear to say, I can't serve God. I'm a nobody down here. I'm down here. They're up here. I can never be up here. And that's not true. And so today we're going to look at a couple of events in Abraham's life that definitely showed that, and we tend to gloss over. He wasn't ready for the role God had called him to. And did he know it? I don't know. There's a couple of these events. He definitely knew it by the end of the event. He was seriously flawed in many ways, and God had to prepare him for this calling. He had to qualify the called. Okay, so Halloween, fear. Who's got a good scared to death story for us? Anybody?
I nearly drowned.
That was it. You can add a little flavor.
Twice for me. I worked for this farmer right out of high school, and he had a hired man, and I worked with the guy, and the farmer had a son, and Howard was a big man, but he was crippled from the legs down, and he had a big chest. Anyway, we were Lake McConaughey, which is on the North Platte River, and and the wind was blowing. We went up to fish, and we'd been fishing all day, and kind of around this point, and we saw a cloud coming up. I said, well, maybe we better, our car was around this point, and so we get in. We got around there, and in the meantime, the storm, we saw it coming, but it was, and Howard said, well, I'm going to go, we were going straight in the waves like you're supposed to, but the water was coming in the back faster than, they had a probably 25 horse motor, or I don't know, but anyway, so he got sideways and
That was it.
capitalized the boat. And when I come up, I was at one end of the boat, and this Bob Kettler was the other end, and he was a good Catholic, and he was saying the Hail Mary, You know, how dumb as me, I thought maybe it was only 6, 8 feet from the boat. Maybe I can help him get over. He grabbed hold of me and we went down, down, down. It was black. I saw the headline in the Sydney paper that I've died. Oh, man. But somehow he let go. And then humans we're like animals. I mean, it wasn't enough to hang on to that boat. We had to maul it. He was as scared as I was, so we just kept turning that boat over. And in the meantime, Howard had made the shore with his son, and he found a big branch, and he swam out, and we grabbed that branch, and it pulled us back into the ground. But we'd have been another, if you remember, you know, McConaughey, it was probably another mile and a half before we'd have been close to shore again.
Yeah, it's a big lake.
So, it's a memory. I thank God. Maybe I was getting ready for this.
Yeah, I'd say he still had plans for you. Anybody else?
Shane and I and the boys were coming home in Brazil from a movie late at night. This is like January 11th. And there's only one little road that goes out of the cobblestone road back to our house. And we're on it, and there's several cars in front of us. All of a sudden, everything stops. Two guys get out of the car, 2 cars in front of us, grab their guns, and go to the car in front of them and take the people out of the car, out of that car. And we just didn't really know what was going to happen. We didn't get hurt. There weren't any shots fired. And I tell you, that was a moment. We were a long ways from home.
Any more?
Expand on that story a little bit. So the car that had the people actually in it, that the kid was in front of us, they were in front of them, so there was nowhere to go, and you couldn't back up, you couldn't go forward. And they actually got him out and put him in the front of the car. Oh. Yeah, they were like,
Scene from The Godfather.
Yeah. We went to Yellowstone Park, and we were in one of those pop-up, those top houses. And there was a bunch of grizzly bears that come down, and they were trying to, I guess, get food or something. Anyway, one of them put his hand in and ripped the kit from the top all the way down. And my sister Shirley and I were asleep in the floor. So had we woken up, it would have got us.
Because you'd have screamed and
Yeah, because it had its claw.
Yeah.
And my brother Tommy was there, and it was like really close to Mom and Dad's head when it came down, because they were the part that came out. Anyway, I don't think my dad's afraid of anything. He must not be, because he got his shoe, and he was beating it off, trying to protect all of us. And finally, he hit the bear on his nose. And that's when it yelled and screamed and backed down.
Bear decided it had enough.
So, taking all of that with the shoe.
Yeah, that grizzly is not like a black bear. A black bear, yeah, people can chase off. Grizzly, they'll eat you. They will eat you. I have several. I know you're surprised. Most of them self-inflicted. This one was, I had to be, I think I was 17, and I was in Council Bluffs. And my buddy's girlfriend wanted to drive my Baja. Yes, I had a Baja Volkswagen, and I lived in Iowa. No one else had one. And he wanted to drive it, and he was driving a Cutlass, 67, 68 Cutlass that had a huge motor in it. Anyway, I mean, I'm a really cautious guy anyway, but whatever. Got the best of me that night. So We let him, he and his girlfriend were driving around my car, and I was driving around his with a couple other guys, and we line up at the viaduct. So if you know anything about Council Bluffs, there is a 2-mile long viaduct that used to go over the Rock Island Railroad switch yards underneath there. We're at the bottom, at a light. This kid pulls up next to us, revving his engine, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, leave me alone. At the last minute, one of my buddies was like, go ahead, show him. I got to the top of that viaduct, and I was doing 100 miles an hour. And guess what I saw on the other side of the viaduct? Taillights. At this point, I'm praying, because I got about 10 seconds before we're all going to die. And I'm pumping the brakes. They're smoking. They're not. I mean, I got the emergency brake out. I'm not a dumb kid. Well, I'm a dumb kid, but pushing on the emergency brake. There's nobody in the turning lane. So I go into the turning lane. I mean, the wheels are smoking. Guess who's on the other side in the turning lane looking at me? The police. Ugh. I'm like, I guess I'm going to get a ticket. Let's pray we don't get hit. I mean, I'm talking to my buddies this whole time. We go into the turning lane, and I go through, and just as my wheels cross that line, the light went green. We went and parked the car after that, and I didn't go anywhere the rest of the night. That was definitely, and it was only a couple seconds, but man, oh man, I saw my life flash before my very eyes.
When you said that about cars, I had a 68 Camaro when I'm up there, and I just put a hot engine in it. Got them all ran, flying over the hill. There's about 50 cop cars down there that were wrecked that one. I was pulling gears like that. And I went right on by, nobody ever come after me, but they could have. I'm doomed.
Okay, so let's talk about fear. There's two kinds of fear that we want to talk about today. One is an unhealthy fear, and the other is a healthy fear. The unhealthy fear is a feeling of agitation and anxiety caused by the presence or threat of danger. This fear is false evidence appearing real. This is not my definition. This is someone else's. But it's spot on. Fear causes problems to seem greater than they really are. With exaggerated fears of problems we face, we think problems are overwhelming. And I've had it before. You ever worried so much, but the worry and anxiety was worse than what actually ended up happening? Stomach hurts, you're physically ill, and then, things play out, and you're like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Nothing happened.
Fear that prevents us from enjoying the blessings we have and interacting with others. One who fears cannot be at peace and know true joy. And this kind of unhealthy fear makes people isolate themselves, stop talking to God, stop talking to anybody. They go and hide. This is sort of me. When things have gotten ugly in my past, I'd run. Not good. Fear that hinders our ability to serve God. Fear of people, fear of failure, fear of whatever often hinders us in our service to God and spreading His word. And that's the devil. Those phobias, all that stuff, that's the devil. Fear that motivates us to disobey God. Certain fears often prompt us to do things which are displeasing to God. Sin. For example, fear of failure and rejection. Such fears have often led people to cheat, wrong crowd. An example there is giving in to improper sexual advances. We've heard some of that in the Old Testament. There's some stories about that. Healthy fear. Healthy fear, not all fear is harmful. Okay, that's why we call it healthy fear. There's a place in our heart as a Christian to have that kind of fear, to have that spot. What is it? We know what it is. Extreme reverence or awe towards God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Will cause one to hate evil, will prolong life, provide strong confidence in God, and is a fountain of life, is the way to blessings, honor, and life. When we properly understand whom to fear, then we can overcome any fear or phobia that would rob us of peace that Jesus offers. Okay, Can someone read Psalms 27:1?
The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?
Now, when we're not in a situation where we're afraid, scared, anxiety, we can all say, well, that makes complete sense. God's in control. But that's not how our brains work sometimes. I really like this. As you can see, this is Ralph Waldo Emerson. The wise man in the storm prays to God, not for safety from danger, but from deliverance from fear. It is the storm within which endangers him, not the storm without. And this is really fitting for the two stories we're going to look at this morning. So real quick, fear imprisons, faith liberates. Fear paralyzes, faith empowers. Fear disheartens, faith encourages. Fear sickens, faith heals. Fear makes useless, faith makes serviceable. Fear makes us hopeless. With faith rejoices while faith rejoices in God. Okay, so what does all this have to do with Abraham? Here's the map. You can't see it, but he was way over here in Ur somewhere, up here by Iran, right here somewhere. And that made this track all the way over here. This is a guy with goats and sheep, and this is a long, long journey he made. And he made it all the way down to Egypt for a time. Can someone read, a lot of this story is going to come out of Genesis 12. Can someone read 1 through 3? Verses 1 through 3, Genesis 12.
The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the people on earth will be blessed through you.
So at the age of 75, in Haran, however you want to pronounce it, it's Abram, not Abraham, but Abraham was sent by God to move to an unknown land that he would show him. Without any mention of disbelief or doubt, Abram took his nephew Lot and his wife Sarai and set out for the land which God would show him. That in itself is an amazing part of the story. It is an important part of the story. Genesis 12:7. Can someone read 7 for us?
Here to Abram said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord and set there to him.
So God has promised Abraham descendants and land for them. And he knows this. He is clear on this subject. So in the midst of all this, Abraham in his life saw a lot of challenges. Some self-inflicted, some not. Famine is in the land, and he has to go. He's following the grass. He's got sheep and goats and cattle, so he has to follow the grass. Sojourn is what the Bible calls it, moving this group of tents and animals wherever there's grass to be fed. And it leads him down to Egypt. So now we're going to read about Abram's scheme. Can someone, this is only 10 verses, so can someone read 12, 10 through 20?
Famine in the land, so Abram went to Egypt to sojourn. The sojourn went, where the famine was severe in the land. And it came about when he came near to Egypt that he said to Sarah, his wife, see now, I know that you are a beautiful woman. And it will come about when the Egyptians see you that they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me. But they will let you live. Please say that you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, and that I may live on account of you. And it came about, when Abram went into Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Therefore he treated Abram well for her sake, and gave him sheep and oxen and donkeys and male and female servants and female donkeys and camels. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Then Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this that you have done? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, there is your wife, take her and go." And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they escorted him away with his wife and all that belonged to him.
So somehow in my mind, in the past, it was like, okay, Pharaoh was a bad guy. He took Abram's wife. That's not what happened. Abram is scared, so he devises a scheme that required his wife Sarai to lie, to save his own hide. He's willing to surrender his wife to the Pharaoh to save his life. Let that sink in. He's giving his wife away. Wait a second, this guy was promised descendants, and we could chase that this morning and we won't, but he was promised multiple times before this happened that he was going to be blessed and have descendants. And God had to continue to repeat the promise to him and add even more detail. Well, and we can talk about that. It's quite a bit of deceit on his part. When a guy says she's my sister, every other guy knows what he's saying. And that's what he was trying to get across. He was trying to game the system.
Well, I know, but I thought
They were related. They both had
he was
different mothers.
his half sister.
Correct.
So, like Abraham Lincoln said, he didn't lie, but he didn't give the whole truth.
When you look at a Pharaoh and you say she's my sister, it means she's free game. That's what that's saying. Yeah, but it was deceit on his part. He was playing a game, thinking he could play the game. So for a time, the illusion of control brought comfort, or at least relief. I still don't understand in his mind, how did he think any of this was going to play out? And that's what fear does to people.
Well, I was thinking if he hadn't done that, the Lord would not have shown his power to Pharaoh. I mean, in the beginning, he was thinking, okay, if I just let it go and they find out she's my wife, they'll kill me. So why didn't they go ahead and just kill him? And then they could have the wife. But Pharaoh saw the Lord's power.
Yep, he did. And we see it at the end of this story too. Why didn't Pharaoh just go ahead and kill him? Because let me tell you, I guarantee you Pharaoh killed a lot of men for a lot less. The kind of plagues, y'all know what they're talking about when they say plagues on his household. We don't even need to discuss that, but he did take her as his wife. It seemed to be working. In fact, he grew wealthy on account of the Pharaoh's liking Sarai. Now, is he scheming the system? Or he might be learning he can scheme the system when this happened. He's probably not thanking God in this situation. He's probably thinking, yeah, this worked out pretty well for me. And it's interesting. So God's working with Abram. He's called him. Now he needs to get him on the right path so he can be who God wants him to be. He shines light on Abram's sin. And it's not some other prophet. It's the Pharaoh. How do you think the Pharaoh figured it out? It doesn't say, so it's open to guesses, but it doesn't say how the Pharaoh figured it out, but he did figure it out. I mean, he could have, God could have come to him, but he doesn't, it's not mentioned in the scriptures.
It was a little more linked into spiritual entities. And he probably got told that this is the evil that you have brought on to us.
And you see in the stories in the Old Testament, God wasn't just talking to the prophets. He was talking to other folks too, other people, not just the Hebrews. He was talking to other folks.
Well, you have to be trying to figure out what causes these plagues.
Well, and anyway, yeah, when it comes to whatever these plagues were, it was obvious what was happening. He had to know. Well, he figured out sooner or later. And, at that point, he still could have had a saying, hey, she was a sister, how would I know? And something else happened and whatever. Beautiful woman, and she's one of my wives now. So the man of faith was rightly rebuked by a pagan king. I mean, how embarrassing. Everybody in the land had to know. Everybody in the land had to know what was going on with the Pharaoh's house, with this beautiful woman that he just took, and now all of a sudden they're leaving the country with a bunch of booty. So Abram's fear. We talked about this a little bit. Fear can crowd out faith in difficult times. We're human, and our brains tend to go back to that paleo piece of our brain and that fight or flight syndrome. Yeah, I'll tell the story. So there used to be this show called Buzzkill. This was back in the 80s. And these guys would get together and they'd do dumb things. And they'd video it. And a lot of it was, I don't know, this is the only episode I remember. So they decide they're going to do this Bigfoot hike. So they go and they rent one of those portable signs and they, Sasquatch sighting, hike, $10, whatever. And truckloads of people are pulling. This is like in Oregon. Truckloads of people are pulling in for these hikes. Are they actors? I don't think so. So they got a guy dressed up in a gorilla suit. So, they get about a mile up the trail and here comes Bigfoot. And everybody's screaming and yelling and running. Well, that was all fun and games until a guy chose fight over flight. And he picks up a branch that's like 8 feet long, and he is beating the tar out of the guy in the gorilla suit. And the guy in the gorilla suit is running from him up the mountain. This guy chased him like a half a mile, just beating him to death. I'm like, yeah, it's all fun and games till somebody starts getting smacked around. And that's what that is, fight or flight. Yeah, you talked about the grizzly. And that's what happens. Right here, his fear is crowding out who God is, what God has done for him, what God has promised, and all he can think is how do I get rid of this feeling? We've all had it before. How do I get rid of this feeling? Some live with a sense of fear even though there isn't any clear threat. And that's we work things up in our minds. Now, was the Pharaoh a really bad dude and, everybody knew if you mess with the Pharaoh, you died? Like Abram, sometimes we try to control our circumstances that we don't like. And usually bad things happen as a result. This need for control often leads people to manipulate those they love. And think about that. You're in a bad situation and you're trying to figure it out, create a scheme, whatever you want to call it. And everybody around you, you're controlling them too as well. You're trying to control this whole situation and other people. And this behavior leaves no room for God to work. And we'll talk about it in another class, but you ever heard that saying, put wheels on your prayers? And I think he might have been trying to do a little too much that air. Of course, control over our world is an illusion, and it's dangerous when we think we can.
Watching the news, and it's so shocking that day. But what I can say is, it has caused me to watch news in the morning every day since. And I know that it's out of fear that I do it, because I've never been interested in history, never been interested in, world events. It just wasn't on my list, but it has been ever since 9/11. It bothers me that that's still happen, because I know why it's happening. I'm still afraid.
It was a tough event.
Kind of where I'm at right now with Israel.
They hit Iran.
Yeah, and
It didn't hardly make the news.
it's just a matter of time before, I mean, that could easily blow up into another world war.
Easily. Abraham's fear continued. Only God is big enough to manage our circumstances, not us. And that's not to say sit down and don't do anything, but you got to leave God, and Michael talked about this several weeks ago, you got to leave room for the Holy Spirit to work. God loved Abram, and he loves us too much to let us live in delusion. And you know, sometimes then when we get disciplined, we shouldn't be pouting about it, because what God's trying to do is make us better. God's trying to get us on the right path. Like I said, I can't imagine Abram standing there in front of Pharaoh getting lectured and then kicked out of the country. At some point, our schemes inevitably fall apart and our secrets are exposed. And it's healthy for that to happen. It has to happen, or we're not going to be God's child. God's going to take care of us, and if he has to discipline us, he will. Abram experienced a painful public exposure of his lies and deceit. And really the lesson is, let God do his work. Okay, that's story number one. We're going to fast forward a lot of stuff. So a lot of things happen to Abram, and he becomes Abraham before the next story. So he heads to the Negev, which is a wilderness desert region between Egypt and Israel. Some call it Negeb. I don't know, whatever. That's the Hebrew translation. He had become wealthy. So that was an important part coming out of this whole story and his scheme. At the end of the day, God solved all the problems and gave him a bunch of wealth. Because God's still trying to take care of him. He's got plans for him. He's working them. But is that what Abraham sees in all this? Or is Abraham seeing, oh, yeah, I'm the man? Him and Lot split up. Remember that? They got too large. So and Lot, we won't chase that either this morning, but Lot chose the more pleasing looking spot. Didn't go so well for him. Abraham then has to rescue Lot. And that's a great story. He gets 300 men and he's like, let's go, let's roll. I mean, this is the same guy who gave up his wife. Then he meets Melchizedek, and Melchizedek blesses him. Then the Lord makes a covenant with him in 15. A story we will cover in a couple of weeks, or next week, Hagar and Ishmael, another life learning lesson for Abraham. The covenant of circumcision, then the three visitors. I thought that was really cool. They're sitting there and they're like, well, should we tell Abraham what we're going to do? Like Abraham was like, what? What? He pleads for Sodom. I mean, he pleaded, which is cool. And then, of course, Sodom and Gomorrah ultimately is destroyed. All right, so fast forward. Abraham and Abimelech. And this spelling, his name is like 12 different ways. I chose it with a K, some is CH, whatever. Genesis 10, it's 20 verses. So can I have somebody read the first 9 or so, and then somebody else finish the chapter?
20.
20.
And Abraham journeyed from there to the south and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and stayed in Gerar. Now Abraham said to Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, indeed, you are a dead man, because of the woman who you have taken. She is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, will you slay a righteous nation also? So did he not say to me, she is my sister, and she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands, I have done this. pages aren't turning right. And God said to him in a dream, yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore I did not let you touch her. Now therefore restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, you and all yours. So Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and told all these things in their hearing. And the men were very much afraid. And Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us? How often have I offended? How have I offended you, that you have brought this on me, and on my kingdom a great sin? You have done deeds to me that ought not to be done.
Abraham replied, I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, but she became my wife. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, this is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere I go, say of me, he is my brother. Then Abimelech gave sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham. And he returned Sarah, his wife, with him. Abimelech said, my land is before you. Live wherever you like. To Sarah he said, I am giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you. You are completely vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his slave girl, so they could have children again. For the Lord had closed up every womb in Abimelech's household because of Abraham's wife Sarah.
Okay, a lot in that story.
How do you think that Sarah felt about her husband?
Oh, that's what I was just gonna say that. So Abraham saying she is my sister. He's the one saying it this time, right? Was she gotten tired of saying it? Well, I guess she was getting tired of saying it. Like, come on, step up, be a man.
They do point out there that she truly was his sister through his father.
But like I said, that's a game being played. And when you look at a king and say, oh yeah, she's my sister. Okay. And it must have been customary when you went into another area and the king saw another beautiful woman who was single. He was like, I'll marry her too. That's how they married into other groups around them so they could have treaties and grow their land, et cetera, et cetera.
And it was normal. That's what she was doing normally, saying, I am his sister. So it wasn't like it was just a couple of times that it happened. It was a lifestyle.
They were running a scam. Whether that was to protect him from dying or, and we'll see that here in a second, we'll talk about more. And he sends for her and takes her as his wife. God appears to Abimelech in a dream. Abimelech knows who God is. Abimelech calls Abraham out. This is sin and ought not to be done. But then he gives him animals, slaves, and 1,000 shekels of silver, which is, and he has no problem accepting it. So this isn't to beat Abraham up. This is to point out Abraham is human. Abraham is, God's still working on me. He's stumbling here some. So we're going to call this Abraham's relapse because that's what he is. He's going back to the old way. He's going back to the, I can control this. I can work this system. Who is afraid in this story? Who's the one afraid? Abimelech. He knows this is sin, and he is in fear for his life. He's afraid God's going to kill him. Now, keep in mind, we're looking at Abraham, and Abraham says he's scared of Abimelech killing him. Somehow he's not afraid of God right now. He's afraid of Abimelech. I mean, that's what a phobia and that's what stinking thinking, as we call it, does to you. You get messed up in, sanity and insanity. And walking up to another king and going, oh yeah, she's my sister. That is the definition of insanity. And Sarah, and I already mentioned this, Sarah was not the one who said it this time. It was Abraham. Okay, so I don't know this. It doesn't say it. We know Abraham was also manipulating Sarai in this thing, Sarah. So was he manipulating anybody else? Was he manipulating God? Who here has a big brother? How many played that game before that big brother behind me, don't mess with me? I get away with whatever I want because he will enforce it. Anybody? I mean, I know when I got in messes as a kid, my brother showing up going, yeah, don't mess with my little brother. Is that how Abraham was feeling in this situation? Was he saying, I could scam this a little bit. God's going to clean up this mess. He knows God's going to clean the mess up. He has already cleaned up so many messes. Is he doing that? Or is it still just the fear? I don't know. This is amazing a second time. It's like, what good is going to come of this?
And he does have that promise from God already. So, if he trusts God, then he has to know that this is going to be taken care of.
And by now, he's already been told Sarah is the one. And he's still giving her away to kings.
I wanted to point out, he gave him 1,000 shekels, right? I looked to see how much a shekel was.
That's a lot.
4 days' wages, 1 shekel. 1,000 shekels would be 12 years worth of pay. That's a lot of money.
One would say, okay, what's Abraham's priority? Money, power, control, huge.
Yeah.
So here's Abraham. He's wealthy already, and he still looks like he's gaming things.
I'm just thinking about present day and how God uses leaders, presidents, governors, whatever the leader may be in the political world. And, we think, oh, these people are awful or evil or whatever. Look what Abraham was doing. Look what David did.
Yep.
And God loved these people. He loves these people now, too.
That's correct.
And we've got to remember that. That he can use anybody.
Can use anybody. So, I'd already mentioned, he took the payoff.
Wouldn't take it from,
Melchizedek. Good.
wouldn't take
Yeah.
it from all those people.
He's like, no. I don't want it. I don't want, you to think I'm taking from you. Why was that, you think? We're running out of time, but. Oh, yep. Abraham prays to God to heal Abimelech. Why does God, last question, why does God make Abimelech go ask Abraham to pray for him so he and his house will be healed? Was that more punishment to Abraham? I think it was. Yeah, now you get to pray for me. Why? No, God says you got to pray for me.
Well, he did tell him he was a prophet.
So here we have natural man who's trying to control the situation. We have the king who is a God believer. He's scared. He's scared of God. We got the other one, doesn't look like he's scared of God. So anyway, there you go. There's our healthy and our unhealthy fear.
Good class.
Good morning.